clock stopped at 3:18. Zerpina Maximoff considered the clock. It was not a remarkable piece, merely a low humming box of dark mahogany that sat on the mantelpiece, inherited from a great-aunt whose existence was otherwise irrelevant. At 3:17 p.m., Zerpina was due to take her afternoon dose, and she liked to use the minute hand as her slow, quiet countdown. Her life currently was a series of small, manageable grids, and the clock was the centerpiece of her calendar. The apartment itself was small, aggressively beige, and designed to contain no surprises. This was necessary. Zerpina's own internal landscape was already too unpredictable. The outside world needed to be a precise, measured echo of a functional, ordinary life. She had just finished polishing the silver casing of the pendulum, a task she found soothing, the repetition smoothing the rough, brittle edges of her day. There was a speck of something on the wood, a dark, almost greasy stain near the base of the clock face. It offended her sense of order. She leaned in, a microfiber cloth wrapped tight around her forefinger, ready to scrub the intrusion away. This was the moment the ordinary shattered. The stain was not on the wood, it was the wood. As she pressed, the grain of the mahogany did not offer resistance. Instead, it seemed to deepen, opening like a map drawn in viscous ink. Her eye caught a specific knot, and instead of a simple circular imperfection, Zerpina saw a geometric design that her mind instantly classified as impossible. The lines were both concave and convex, simultaneously close and distant, folding space into a compact point that should not, by any law of Euclidean geometry, exist. A sound began. It was not loud, but it was total. It was a low vibrational frequency that didn't travel through the air, but resonated directly within her jawbone and the base of her skull. It was the sound of the universe settling, not her universe, but the vast, hideous machine beneath it. The clock stopped at 3:18 p.m., but the seconds continued. Zerpina, accustomed to the unreliable nature of her own mind, initially tried to dismiss it as a side effect, a nasty little trick played by the newly adjusted chemistry in her system. "It's the meds," she thought, her internal voice sounding thin and panicky. "The drugs are making the wood look warped." But the knowledge that flowed from the mahogany grain was not a hallucination. It was truth. The hum intensified, coalescing into a single grinding phrase. "We are only surface tension." Zerpina looked around the apartment, which was no longer a refuge of beige normalcy, but a flimsy membrane stretched over a profound and terrifying abyss. The wall before her was not solid sheetrock. It was a chaotic arrangement of shimmering dust and ancient frozen fluids, held in place only by the convention of her belief. The corner where the ceiling met the wall was not a 90-degree angle. It was an intersection point where four separate, unknowable dimensions met and wept a sterile black ooze. She saw in agonizing detail what the mental issues really were, not flaws but sensitivity. Zerpina Maximoff, the fragile receptacle of despair, was simply the only person in the building who could hear the architectural bones of reality groaning. The drugs were not to fix her. They were merely shields against this awful naked knowledge, and the shield was failing. The air grew heavy and wet, smelling of ozone and forgotten libraries. Zerpina staggered back from the clock, pressing her hands against her ears, futilely attempting to silence the foundational roar. She screamed, not out of terror, but out of absolute maddening clarity. She understood, with perfect cold logic, that the floor beneath her feet was not anchored to bedrock. It was the desiccated skin of a creature that had been sleeping for 1 billion years, and the creature was beginning to stir. The vibration was its breath. The stains in the mahogany were its fungal alphabet. She looked at her own hands, and the horror became depraved. Her fingers were no longer simple bone and flesh, but intricate, horrifying mechanisms of tendons and blood, each cell a tiny, screaming universe tethered to her own conscious collapse. She saw the true cyclical nature of her existence, not just living and dying, but being perpetually unwoven and rewoven by unseen, indifferent hands that considered her sanity irrelevant to the greater pattern of things. As the wall finally dissolved into shimmering chromatic chaos, Zerpina Maximoff sank to her knees. She didn't fight the final overwhelming truth that the world was built on a lie, maintained by a colossal, uncaring geometry. She only whispered one final broken thing into the hum, before the light consumed her. It was never safe.